All right.
Recording in progress.
Recording in progress. Very good. All right, it is now 7 o'clock.
You don't have a gavel, do you?
Hey, good evening. I would like to call the regularly scheduled Middlebury Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, July 25th, 2023 to order. Our first action is the approval of the agenda.
Second.
There it is. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And Heather included. We've got unanimity. The next item is the approval of the consent agenda. On this, we have the minutes of our last meeting. There are no liquor licenses. We have some municipal grants in aid agreements, town manager's report, including the Turning Point Center of Addison County's 180-day report on the National Opioid Settlement Funds and how well they're spending that to support our community. The due dates for taxes for fiscal year 24, the setting of the educational property tax rate for fiscal year 24. I would accept a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any items for further discussion, for pulling, for anything?
Just a reminder that the tax due dates are November 15th, 2023, and March 15th, 2024.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Heather?
I'm abstaining from the minutes, Andy.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm in favor.
Perfect. Thank you. Moving on, our next item is citizen comments. This is a time for anyone who's present, either in person or joining us on Zoom, to address us on any matter that's not on the agenda. Is there anyone here for that purpose? No hands?
Big crowd.
I know. I
Got a lot of people. You're all here for agenda items.
Wow.
Boo.
We'll be done by 7:30.
All right.
Greg Prescott.
Come on up.
Yep.
Yes, please.
There's no mic? Oh, no mic.
We can grab that mic.
Grab that one
Yeah.
up there.
Perfect. Great.
Greg Prescott, I live in East Middlebury, 468 East Main Street. I just wanted to come and give an appreciation to Emily and the Public Works crew. Our house lost a significant portion of our backyard, or the river took it back, and that was a really terrifying moment for us. And the Public Works crew, the Vermont Highway Department, showed up and did some fabulous work for myself, for my wife, and for just our community. So I just wanted to say thank you and publicly appreciate them.
Thanks so much. That's great. Those pictures of your backyard were very scary. Even, separated by days from the event. Like, wow. Anyone else with a public comment?
We're going to have more on that later on.
I think we do have
Okay.
more
Okay.
discussion on it. All right. Moving right along, our next item of business is the Bird Scooters proposed memorandum of understanding.
It's back.
Yeah, it is back. This was right around when I first joined the select board, I think, that this had come up, and we had agreed to go forward with a pilot project, but they didn't have a local coordinator or could not find someone to have responsibility for seeing that these things got charged and placed not in the wrong place. I believe that Chief Hanley was going to discuss this, or are we just going to approve it?
Jeremy Lynch is here from Bird
Oh,
Scooter.
perfect.
And
And here
he's-
comes the chief. He's right on time. We're running early. It's all good. Yeah, just barely.
So, actually, the chief had drafted the MOU with the work of the Public Safety Committee last year.
Right.
We were all on the verge of approving that, but Bird Scooters was unable to find a local person to manage the Bird Scooters. Now they have found someone, so they're back with essentially the same agreement. We did tweak the draft agreement a little bit to put in some provisions about citing of the scooters, some sign off on that, and how they're going to be picked up. And Jeremy's provided some additional information about how that is going to happen and how people can contact us if there is an issue.
Excellent.
Well, more to the point, contact Bird.
Yeah, contact
So
Bird.
Yeah, that's not.
Exactly.
Either with calls that they come directly to us in a couple of great ways, so.
When are you planning to launch this?
Probably closer to the end of August.
So only for 2 months then?
Yeah, it's not gonna be long. The good thing is that the FM that we have, so we started at Burlington, we won the Burlington bike share RFP earlier in the summer, so we have running bikes in Burlington right now. And one of the FMs for the bikes lives closer to you guys, lives in Addison actually. So he reached out and said, hey, you guys were trying to do something with them last year, and I said yes, and so he was like, I'd be willing to do that as well if you'd be interested. So it kind of brought it back around. So there's still some logistics to figure out as far as getting the scooters to him and on our end.
Sure.
Plus, I wanted to give time to obviously speak with the college, kind of get their parameters on the program and what they think about it working and any kind of geofencing we need for them. So it just gives us enough time to do that. And sure, it's going to be a short season, but at least we'll kind of get it started. And then my opinion on a short season, though, it kind of gives us a good window into things that need to be tweaked and adjusted and changed. So when they do come back out in the spring, that we can implemented those. And then the pro will have learned from those 2 months, and then the program can be better as it runs through its full season next year.
Nice. Where do you house the scooters during the winter?
They'd be stored at the FM's location. If not picked up, it really just depends. Sometimes we'll just come back up and get them. And most likely we'll be probably changing the inventory, so we'll probably just go get them.
So we approved this last year.
Yeah.
Or, 2 years ago. And so we were all set to go. So this is pretty much the same deal, right, Chief?
There have been a couple of amendments that we worked out with Jeremy on this, but nothing significant, just as far as where the bikes are going to go and that sort of thing.
And you're still good with this?
Yes.
Okay.
And Jeremy, FM stands for?
Fleet manager,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions from the board?
No?
So I'll move to approve the proposed MOU agreement with Bird Rides, Inc. to remain in effect until November 30, 2023.
Second?
All those in favor?
I just have,
Oh.
I just have, everybody in the public has to understand that we debated this. It went to the Public Health and Safety Committee a couple of times. We probably had 3 meetings on it and did it over and over again. Sounds like we're pushing this through, but it's well thought out. And we understand the plan.
Yeah, and it's a trial, and we'll tweak it if there's
Right.
things that don't work. And yeah, I think, great, thanks. All those in favor, please indicate
Aye.
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 Very good. Passes unanimously. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks for being here.
Super, thanks everybody, have a great evening.
Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
Oh, that's quick. On time.
Glad I could help out.
Slide in.
I couldn't find a parking space. Everything's full all over the place.
Crazy.
Wow, isn't it crazy?
They're all seeing Barbie.
That's not what that is.
Excellent.
You need to be issuing parking tickets or something.
Welcome, Emily.
Thank you.
So our next item is an update on the flood damage in Middlebury. When we last met, it was the day of the extensive flooding in many parts of our state. I work in Montpelier. My building had 4 or 5 feet of water in the basement of it as I met here 2 weeks ago. and it felt like Middlebury had been spared, and then lo and behold, a torrential downpour in Ripton really did a number on our friends in East Middlebury. And the glowing report we received on the flood mitigation efforts is maybe tempered by the new information?
So I would not I think we definitely spared ourselves catastrophic flooding with the flood mitigation efforts. I think we have a large crowd here who can attest to it. I think there's room for improvement, but I think it would have been a lot worse if those efforts hadn't been in place. So I've walked almost that entire span from where it crosses 125 down all the way to the lower part of the Aussie Road section. And there's a number of spots that have significant scour or issues, but no major floods went into neighborhoods and into residential areas and destroyed infrastructure. So on that note, I think it was completely effective. I know we have a number of property owners here who definitely had major concerns on their property, and they'll be ongoing if we don't go in and take further measures and sort of reevaluate. I just want to make sure that we're not making a knee-jerk reaction. And I think I haven't met you, Andersons, yet. Hi. But I met most of you when we were in complete emergency panic mode and just trying to solve the immediate problem. And I think now that we've kind of calmed down from that, it's important to step back and really look at what we're dealing with. And so I walked it today with the engineer, one of the engineers from SLR, and with Amy Sheldon. And I think there are, like the wall that was extended down below the gristmill bridge. Maybe, can you, Kathleen, I feel like one of those, I'll go through it with the slides, because I think that'll be easier to just formulate. So this is the property at 468 East Main Street. Greg just spoke during the public comments, but they essentially live in the area that has the red area, the red band around it. And we went in, they had lost a significant amount of their slope, and my immediate concern in looking at that is that the scour was going to breach the Army Corps wall that has been in place since 1927. And they had already lost stabilization measures on their slope previously, and so there was nothing protecting it anymore, whereas just downstream, that wall and the berm is still in place and it's vegetated and there's still a lot of rock, and so it's held together really well. If we had lost that section of property any more than we did, it would have been much more catastrophic, and potentially all of those homes would have been severely impacted. So that was sort of the thought process with the immediate measures that we took there. So I did go through Army Corps and also river engineers for the state last weekend. They were both great in answering the phone on a Sunday. Got immediate permissions to get in there and do stabilization. The state engineer met me on site on Monday and looked at what we had done and approved it and said it looked good, and he issued a permit right then and there to keep it all above grade. So I think ideally in this location, it's not a spot that we worked on in the flood resiliency project, but clearly it's a spot that needs attention moving forward. And I think it would be a good spot to sort of construct a more stabilized berm with vegetated matter, and also, like incorporate clay and things of that nature into it. But again, I'm not an engineer. I'm not a hydrologist. I've just taken a lot of classes on these things.
I think of scouring as cleaning pans. Does it mean more than just water washing away existing?
So let's look at the next slide.
There we go.
There used to be about 30 feet, 25, 30 feet more yard out behind that garage, and you can still see it if you look at Google Earth and sort of that satellite imagery. And so maybe the next one, I forget what I did after that. So that really showed, I mean, they lost,
Very close.
I don't think I'd put a slide in looking under the garage, but it scoured, 5 feet in. It was pretty much to the doorway, if not a little bit beyond. And it's just sitting on a bed of cobbles at this point.
Has the
So-
water receded now?
Oh, yeah.
The water is much lower now, yeah. It's gone down considerably. And so from talking to different neighbors that do have rain gauges in this area, I've heard anywhere from 3.5 inches to 4.5 inches, and it was just so fast. It was over like a 2-hour time frame, just super flashy. This river is really flashy anyway because it's coming from a mountain watershed and then drops down to the plains. And so as soon as you make that flat transition, you lose a lot of material, a lot of sediment, and so then you end up with sandbars, and it shifts and moves because of that. So I think this is sort of at the upper end of that transition zone where it's really coming off the mountain and then hits where you have more floodplains and areas like that to work with. So that was my immediate concern, was just getting this area stabilized so that we don't breach that greater wall that has, I think that is from the 1927 flood, is my understanding. It's been interesting meeting with different residents. The different berms and measures that have been implemented have been, during these major flooding events. And so 1927 was obviously a significant event in Vermont. And so there is a large stretch that must have been impacted from that storm. And then there was the storm in 1988, I believe. And so then a lot of the southern part of, or the more, I don't know, is it south? It's like more out towards Route 7, like the Aussie berm section. That all got constructed during that incident. And then I think there was some flooding a few years later. So now it's this segmented approach, but I think moving forward, we need to look at this entire stretch and recognize that there's a lot of infrastructure and a lot of residents within there that, obviously have been impacted by.
Any more slides?
Yeah, there are. Can you keep? So that's the Army Corps berm from 1927. So
Wow.
we essentially tied in to that section of it, just a little bit upstream from there. Keep going, one more down, Kathleen. So this is when I was out there with the state river engineer, and he approved the work we were doing. So essentially we're keying in huge boulders. They're like 4 to 6 foot, and they're enormous. We were fortunate that Acker was able to secure them from their pit. So they're really well keyed in, which helps prevent scour from getting underneath and then causing further
Did we
issues.
do all that? Public Works?
That was Acker doing it. I think we had one truck helping out. Our crew was still up on North Branch, which is further in the slides. So it was sort of a team effort. I knew it wasn't good when Matt called me at 7 a.m. Saturday morning. I knew, yeah. But they had come in at 3. So this is, I think when I got to the site at 8:30 or something, that was Saturday morning. So it had already dropped considerably. So from talking with residents today, I don't know the exact elevation in Irene, but I think it hit the girders on Gristmill Bridge. I don't know that it overtopped the bridge. And And so I was speaking with somebody today who said they were standing on the Gristmill Bridge at 11:30 Friday night, and a tree that was about 12-inch diameter went through and hit the bridge.
Yeah.
So the water was right there.
Pretty close. Yeah.
And so it had already dropped, I think, at this point to some degree, but this is, as of Tuesday, or the Sunday through Tuesday window of rain that impacted so much of central Vermont, all of the armoring was still in place along that wall.
Right.
And so the Friday night carried that away. And it wasn't quite as big as what we put in the yard just upstream, but it was in, 3-foot diameter. So like massive boulders
Wow.
to be carried off.
Where are they?
Well, they're downstream now.
Somewhere downstream. There's a great dam somewhere downstream.
Yeah, I know they're downstream. I don't know where. But
The Zephyr will set them all in their backyard.
There,
somebody's
yeah,
backyard's
there,
full of
I mean, so there are a lot of chutes that were incorporated. And could you go to the next one, Kathleen? So this was later in the week, so that was Thursday. So it had already dropped. And so this shows the sheet piling along the bottom. So that sheet pile,
Was up
I
there.
think that bridge, or that wall was having a lot of scouring issues before the flood resiliency project. And so this is one of the measures that definitely had a positive impact. That sheet piling goes down 8 feet. And so totally protected that wall from scouring and causing that to all blow out. I think there are some issues on the downstream end of the sheet piling. It looks like some boulders might have gotten caught up in it and has peeled it away from the concrete. So I have some structural concerns with that. I looked at it today with the engineer, so he's going to do a little more in-depth thought process on that. And I think the stone that was on that wall, I think it was partly aesthetic, but it was partly armoring the wall, but really those sheets are what is protecting that wall from catastrophic flooding or scour. Structurally, I think it's still fine, even without the armor on it. Okay, next one. So this is, if you look at the top right of the picture, you can see our wall constructed. And then this is the slope just downstream that has been severely eroded, and the Holbrook, is that how you say your? So they're here tonight. They called. I met with them last week to look at their slope. And so I think one of the problems with the project is that where the wall got extended, it has directed more flow at this slope, which is a pretty sandy loam soil with a lot of cobbles, not clay, and so highly erodible. And I think in the correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 1989 work that was done, armoring was installed at the base of your slope, and it's sort of held in pieces, but that it's all gone now, and you lost a considerable amount of land also. And similar to the property upstream, leach field, things of that nature. So I think it's important that we do something moving forward to help armor this, especially since the wall is, accelerating the speed of the flow going towards it. Keep going. So that is standing up on top of their berm, looking upstream. You can't quite see the wall. And I think there's a shot downstream also, but it's also, that soil is so erodible. It's pretty steep right now, but it's going to just naturally want to set back more before it finally gets to its resting spot. So that's looking downstream. So even the property further downstream has a significant amount of scour along the bank there. Keep going. I wish I had some of the pictures from today in there. So then this is from the Aussie berm from the 1988 flooding. I believe this was constructed in 1989. And it's a big berm that was riprap, like large stone, encased in clay, and then another layer of riprap encased in clay again. So, which is sort of like dam technology. It's not necessarily what you would use for stream armoring, but clearly has been effective. It did erode. I walked in today from the lumber yard and then walked downstream. And this is where there's a lot of erosion, and there's also just a lot of debris. There are so many trees on those islands just upstream of this area, and a lot of the flood resiliency work incorporated the chutes and opened up the chutes to act as diversion areas. And I haven't crossed the river yet to get a look at them, but I would imagine they're pretty well full of debris and the stone that has been transported from upstream. The flow has definitely changed considerably. Just standing with Amy and the engineer today. We're trying to figure out which channels had existed and which ones are new, and so the flow has definitely shifted and islands have shifted. So in talking with, and I think, so this one, the berm, they didn't touch the berm structurally during the flood resiliency project, but they added more armor to the toe of it. And most of that armor is gone, so that's all carried also. And along part of this property, they lost about 25 feet of material, I'd say, of riverbank. So significant scour. I think there are some floodplains just downstream of this that definitely helped alleviate major catastrophe. But again, if this berm got breached, you have that entire neighborhood development that would be severely impacted by it. And at this point right now, the flow is pointed in that direction. And now there are a lot of trees down that are sort of making the flow go towards that bank even more so. And from talking with the Army Corps last weekend, we can go back in and re-armor. We can go back in and reestablish the channels to what this project was established to. I just want to make sure that that's the right solution and that we're not, I think we just need to look at, you know, the big picture. And in some places, I think that probably is the right solution, but it might not be. You know, clearly if you add a wall and then it creates scour just downstream, I think we need to look at those aspects of it and try to develop a better plan for some of those areas. Next, Kathleen. So that's looking, so he had some really, really big sycamore trees that I think they had withstood that 88 flood. They must have, because they're pretty big. They're a large diameter, and they're now gone in the river. And so that tree is pushing more water, more flow back against the bank. And so that armoring, I think that armoring is mostly from the flood resiliency project. I don't know that you can really see the core of that berm. I don't know that we got into that core with this flood, but it definitely did a number on the bank itself there. So that I have a better picture from today, but just upstream of this, it just looks like a bomb went off. It's just like huge trees and just debris everywhere. And there's some completely crossing the river, which will then, it might help this situation because it might divert the flow the other way back into one of the chutes that was established. But I think we need to get in there as soon as the water levels are at a safe level and really look at the chutes and see how much debris and sediment they've accumulated from all of this. Moving on to infrastructure within the town. So Andy, you'll be happy to know your log jam is gone. The problem with that is that all of those logs are now downstream. I asked to have the pedestrian bridge closed last week. I don't even remember now. Serious concerns for potential scour on the abutments of that bridge. Fred brought the plan set down from archives, and the two piers for the pedestrian bridge are just poured concrete on bedrock. It's not doweled, it's not tied in. It's withstood a lot. I wouldn't let my grandchild walk across it right now, so trying to use that as a litmus test. We do have a proposal from VHB to come do an inspection on it this week if water levels allow. It's still pretty high. It's down considerably from this, but might still be too high to pull it off.
The concern is that high-velocity rocks or trees could knock one of the supports off?
That is part of the concern. I really want to make sure there's not scour at the pier or abutment. I mean, the abutments are both set back into the slopes, but knowing how saturated the soils are, I want an engineer to take a look at it before. Yeah, and just, I mean, when I was down there today, there's an enormous tree wrapped around that further pier, the Marble Works side. So clearly it's been hit by a lot of debris, and just knowing what's come down from the log jam and just upstream, who knows what other impacts there are. The photo on the right is the snowmobile bridge on 3 Mile Bridge Road, and that one, downstream of that, there was significant scour, so we went in and armored that as well, but that's one moving forward that I think we should look at and doing. Armoring against water, it's a very rough edge, and it can increase velocities, and so it's better to have it vegetated. And this is a really easy location for us to be able to go back in and do a project like that, where we add soils, add clay and protective measures like that, and then vegetate the slope to help hold it together better. Next one. So the photo on the left is them completing the armoring, and they got pretty far downstream. There was a pretty significant bow in the river just beyond the limits that we stopped at. Part of the limits we stopped were regulatory based, but it was also partly, I think it kind of comes out to a point that I think the river will naturally sort of take that direction and be able to reincorporate and get back into its channel more easily. So if we had let this scour go, we would have lost our road. And then potentially the bridge just downstream, the traffic vehicle bridge. To the right is at the very top of North Branch where Dragon Brook intersects. This is I thought Matt said that this culvert was redone after Irene, but I was looking at the structure reports today, and it's dated 2008. So I have a feeling that this was pre-Irene, somehow survived Irene, and I think we need to look at it for its hydraulics, because I think it's significantly undersized. This going up North Branch and Dragon Brook, most of the impacts that I saw were from undersized culverts. So I think as we move forward with our solutions, we need to look at that in the bigger watershed and how we can improve these structures. The grants and aid that we just agreed on tonight, our original intent was to continue work on North Branch with that funding. And so a lot of it, I think, we took care of in the interim, but there's a handful of culverts that we'll have to go back and review and look at the modeling for those. You go to the next one. This is, so one of the primary concerns on Friday night, Saturday was North Branch. This is the very lower end that we paved last year. And there's a culvert crossing right under that coned area. You can see it on the right. This is one of the culverts that I would say is significantly undersized given the amount of flow that it receives. So this is one that we'll have to circle back and look at. And I think we'll be able to get funding from the state to make improvements in this stretch pretty easily. Part of our concern was that the road undermined so significantly here. And it was when the landslide in Ripton had shut down 125, so everybody was coming this way, and the trucks hauling material in and out were trying to come this way. So that was nerve-wracking.
Wow.
But our crew managed to stabilize it as best we can for now, but I think that culvert will definitely be part of the solution in making this improvement also. This is on Dragon Brook. So this was actually across the Ripton town line, but they weren't able to access it. So our crew, we were already up there, so they went in and stabilized it. The culvert was actually intact. It just blew out everything on the side of it. So we kept all of our quantities and hours for this work separate so that Ripton can track it and repay us for that aspect of it. Is that it? I feel like that's it.
Wow.
So Emily, you came up with some preliminary totals today.
Yes. We have so, and I don't know where the state's at. I know they haven't declared us for the disaster relief from FEMA yet, but the last I spoke with them, they were sort of waiting for our numbers to make that declaration, and we hadn't gotten all of our slips in from ACR and things of that nature. So what the state told me was that we were 80,000 away from becoming disaster funded, and our totals today were 115,000. So I think that'll put us over the hurdle with
That's for the county.
For the county,
For the county.
yeah. And I have a feeling that Ripton alone, I think their initial numbers were very low, because from talking to the contractor working on that, they're over $750,000 just for that landslide. So I think Addison County will probably receive the declaration. But
So is this an estimate, or what you think is an estimate of the cost?
Our numbers are based on, you have to convert everything into FEMA equipment. So you have to take, not all of, their numbers are not a perfect match to what we typically bill at. Sometimes they're lower, sometimes they're higher, because I think theirs is on a national level. So we just use their numbers with our hours. Their equipment, if you're using a Cat 330 excavator, you bill it at this rate.
But this is not to pay for work we've already done. This is pay for work we've done and what we have left to do?
This is essentially the emergency repairs we made over that 5-day stretch, or whatever it was, the initial.
But then there's a whole bunch of infrastructure that we've got to.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that count with?
So I think once you get that FEMA declaration, that sort of opens the window for culvert replacements and things like that. I think that opens the window for bigger conversations moving forward.
Can I like, there's a lot of people sitting here. Would we like to hear their story? I mean, each of you?
Heather also has her hand up.
Okay. I'm just gonna say.
Yeah, Heather.
Thanks. I just had a couple of questions for Emily. Emily, when we finished the flood resiliency project in East Middlebury, I'm sure you're aware, there was some guidelines for measuring the sediment so we could determine when we needed to go back in and redo the flood chutes, etc. Do you know if any of that measuring has been done and compared to what it was prior to?
It hasn't been done yet, but we talked about it today. That'll be, yeah.
And then I'd just be interested to know, so this is the first real data we'll have since we did that, and obviously we have pre-measurements and then post-measurements, so I'm just curious where they end up. So if you wouldn't mind sharing those when you have them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, no, I'm afraid to ask, but no updates in any of this on Creek Road? Is the water still too high to assess damage there? I'm just wondering, thinking about where we're at with that policy we put in place, and just curious. And it doesn't have to really be discussed tonight, just sometime in the future. Would like to get an update on that as well.
We can't access it yet. The water's still too high.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. That's it.
Yeah, no problem. I think one conversation sort of on a similar note is I did talk with regional planning earlier this week about getting gauges in this section of the river, which would be really helpful for us moving forward. This stretch doesn't have gauges, so hydraulic modeling can be a little bit tricky. And I think from speaking with the engineer in regards to the sediment question, they had sort of designed the chutes, but the water fluctuated and sediment and material moved even just in that window of design period, that when they went out there, it was a little bit different than what they had originally cited it as. So I think having river gauges would give us a far more accurate image of how flashy this is and what it's responding to in terms of waterfall rain events.
If any of you have questions or comments, this would be a great time to add them to the discussion.
Come on up.
Emily, would you put the microphone over
Yeah.
there?
Just move the mic.
Just move the microphone, yeah, thanks. And you can scoot that other one
Well,
over.
this is just kind of a quick question, I think. I'm Karen Gottschall. I live at 469 East Main Street, just across from Greg and Leanne. And I had a lot of damage done to my foundation from water running off the ridge, actually, and the retaining wall there is going to need some work, and that's going to affect my house and the house to the just immediately to the east, and then there's that ridge runs down to almost to the Wayberry. But I just had a quick question about the last couple of days. There's been crews working, like putting in some kind of
Retaining wall
no, it's like drainage or something along.
along 125.
Yeah, between my house and actually all the way up to the bridge, and I was just wondering if that's to address drainage from the ridge or what the story is there.
So that's the state working on that, is
Oh,
my
okay.
understanding, and I don't entirely know what they're doing there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, they've been putting, like rocks there, which it looks like it's some kind of drainage culvert or something. I'm sorry, I have no idea the vocabulary, but.
I'm assuming that they're still in flood mitigation mode, but they
Uh-huh.
haven't, it's not like some stormwater project that has been in the works for
Right.
years, is my guess.
Yeah.
But I can find out.
Yeah, I've just been curious about
We
what
got
that,
another phone call about that this week.
yeah. Okay,
Good question.
thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Doug Anderson, Doug and Debbie Anderson. We live in East Middlebury. When they built that wall at Catherine's and elsewhere, they didn't have to build a wall on the other side of the river because no one lived there until we built a house there in '84. And I remember looking at the flood maps with Fred Dunnington and said, "You're fine. You're in the 500-year, floodplain." Things have changed a great deal, I think, in our climate. We had a significant amount of scouring. We sit up higher. And I think we're 3 storms away from tragedy, which puts us, I think, in a very good place compared to a lot of people in the room. The question, it doesn't have to be answered right now. When that happens to a homeowner, the question is, what am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? Do I call Acker myself? Do I, how I get all that going? And now we've got to know Emily, and I think some of the answers will be forthcoming. I would be jumping on this, but I'm not sure what can one do in a river, in a floodplain, all of that, and how that information gets out to myself and other people is my question and why we came here tonight. And I'm sure we'll continue that conversation.
Yeah, and I can circle back with you and send you more information on that. I think there's different legs of regulatory measures. So there's the federal level, which is the Army Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction. And then at the state level, there's our rivers engineers, and then there's also floodplain managers and engineers. And so they all sort of work together, and also separately, they all issue separate permits, but with the same goal, essentially. Some of them are more strict than others for what they allow. During the emergency period, which we are now out of, so during that immediate emergency period, they're not requiring you to get permits. If it's a matter, sort of like going in at 468, it was more of a matter of like reconnecting that to prevent further damage. But if you do need to go in after the fact, it's not that difficult to get those permits. But they do limit how much material you can add, where you can add it, and it typically has to be engineered to be able to show that you're not going to cause more impact.
We lost about 10, it's hard to estimate, 10 feet, maybe more than that, but all of the rocks that were in the ground, all the big boulders are now lying right there in the riverbed, which I think probably will make it worse when the next storm comes along. So, can I just can I get down there and push him back up against the wall? Probably not. I mean, probably I'm going to have to have.
So you are able to provide scour protection. You'll never get your 10 feet back. They'll never get their 30 feet back.
Understood.
But you can armor and protect what you have.
Great.
But they really want you to do it in a method that works with the river and your you're not
Great.
causing more problems.
I think Irene, our neighbor, almost, and was right up to the edge of his property, right down our driveway, because he's on Lower Plains, the first house on Lower Plains.
Mhm.
And he put in a ton of riprap
Mhm.
immediately.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he got all any kind of, you know,
I
paperwork
don't
for
know.
it. Yeah, I don't, you
I think a
know.
lot of people make very knee-jerk reactions,
Yeah.
sort
Mhm.
of instant, and this day, I mean, everybody is so busy at these moments.
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
surprised that the river engineer was able to meet me on Monday
Mhm.
because he's all over the place
Right,
now.
right.
So there are, if you do want to work on something on your property, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I've
I
done
will
a
do.
lot of permitting and sort of
Great.
understand it, but.
Great.
Well,
Thanks on behalf of all of East Middlebury for your concern.
Emily, I have a question. When you live along a river like that and you lose 30 feet of your lawn, do you still have 30 feet? You still own that 30 feet? Or is now the waterway a boundary line that you lost that 30 feet and that's no longer yours?
So you still own it, I believe, but it's regulated, so you can't really do anything with it. But I think, I don't think people can go fishing right in their front yard without permission.
But I
Like, if
can
they-
walk down the middle of the stream, and if their lawn is now a stream,
If their lawn, yeah, I don't know.
and who has responsibility of protecting them? Is that the state? Is that us? Or are they supposed to protect themselves from these things? I mean, we obviously invested a lot of money.
Yeah, I think, I do have some of those numbers, so I think it can be multi-tiered, I think if we get declared, as FEMA disaster, there will be funding through that, which I think helped fund, didn't Kathleen, that helped fund the flood resiliency project?
Yes,
didn't it?
yeah, 75%.
So I think,
Wow.
I mean, that project was people's backyards essentially.
Yes.
You know, this was a one-time event that we physically went in there that day and did it, but sort of the same, same concept. It was just on a very small scale at that. So I think, at the town level, we are able to assist and help, and but it all goes back to regulations, what you're allowed to do.
So it sounds like the most important time is right after the flood occurs with the recovery period or whatever it is. Just do as much as you can, then ask forgiveness, or?
I did not say that.
I heard that, though.
I called the Army Corps and the
Okay.
state before we had any equipment in the room.
Well, I was just making my plan for when I buy property along the river, so when it floods, that I'm gonna be ready, but I don't know.
So I mean, I went in the office on, I think it was on Sunday that I talked to both Army Corps and the state, and they printed off all of the permits and what we were allowed to do. There's a certain amount of linear feet that you're allowed to deal with. There's a certain cubic yardage you're allowed to put in below ordinary. I mean, there's still limitations even in the emergency mode before it kicks into a permit. So I think you have to do it wisely no matter what.
Okay. I just know as being you own property along the river, and that's where, to recover that, to get Acker to come and do that work for you on your nickel, I mean, that's an expensive piece of grass.
So I tried to tally up quickly. I just got our numbers right before I came down here. But the dollars that we spent North Branch is just around 26,000. Tree damage, mostly in town, is just over 10,000. Dragon Brook repairs, and some of that again will go to Ripton, just over 15,000. The 3 Mile Bridge work was about 13,000. And I think the quick numbers I saw for that property, that was 22,000 for that stabilization effort.
Okay.
So, it does add up in a hurry, but when you look at, in their situation, for example, if you look at that property, if we had lost their leach field, you essentially lose that property. Because there's nowhere really within that site that you can reconstruct.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
And then you're breaching that Army Corps berm. who knows how many other leach fields. I mean, we have other leach field concerns in the room now that, for areas that are potentially scouring that.
Okay.
Then you're losing
The property.
the property.
Yeah, wow.
That's what happened to the property in Ripton, right? The mudslide. They lost that whole parcel, I think.
They lost their whole house.
The
That
whole
house
parcel,
was
yeah.
The foundation.
And they can't rebuild on that
I
side.
don't think they'll be allowed to, no.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty, we are still just, we are so fortunate. The amount of damage that we have, what we're looking at compared to other municipalities, we're so fortunate.
Right, but we have people sitting in the room that, it's a little different perspective for them.
Exactly. No,
I'm
exactly.
fine, by the way, just saying.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, just, but they're not.
Yeah.
No, agreed. Yeah, agreed.
So do we have a timeline or any idea on like grant?
So, not yet. I got a late email from regional planning. There are some funding opportunities available. We have one on the agenda later tonight, that could potentially help. I think the funding that we need is bigger than these immediate grants that we're looking at. But I think the understanding like the scope of it is the most important part. Like Heather was mentioning, the levels of sediment and things like that. Like we need to get the complete picture formulated before we can really start figuring out how to rebuild and stabilize.
Any other comments or questions from the audience? From the board?
Just thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate hearing your story. Thanks. Sorry.
Very, very much.
And I guess just the main message is if people do have property damage, report it to Vermont 211, because that's sort of the tracking that the state's using, and that will help. There's two different FEMA categories. There's like the infrastructure side of it, and then there's the residential side. So if people did suffer basement flooding, any of that, they're not recognizing all of it, but put it in the system and see what they will recognize. I think it's better to have it in there.
Yeah, will it like if FEMA, if this is declared, like this municipality, will it automatically be open to individual requests, or is that,
I'm not positive. My understanding is that if we get declared disaster, then it does open up funding for residents. Is my understanding, but I could be wrong there. Yeah.
Just in addition to doing 211 and showing up here, is there anybody else that we can write to or petition actively just to have us known to be recognized for FEMA? Bring to the forefront? Is there anybody we should be talking to?
On the residential side of it, my understanding is that regional planning is taking the lead on that, and I have submitted all of your information to them already, unless I haven't talked to you directly. But I think I don't know, Anderson's, I don't know if I've submitted yours, but I think I submitted everybody else to them. And it was the only property that I saw on their list in Middlebury was for a basement being flooded. And so I did reach out back to them and say, what about these other properties that we discussed? And they were gonna circle back with the state. So I think it's a sort of a work in progress.
Thank you.
And I did speak with Andrew from the Regional Planning Commission.
Okay, perfect.
And he said that 211 was down for a time.
The online version.
Yeah, so when FEMA had contacted him to kind of do a drive-through around the various properties, they didn't have any information about anything in East Middlebury.
Huh.
So FEMA was driving from Ripton down
Right,
Main
right
Street
through the neighborhood.
and not even aware of
Wow.
of what
Right.
was happening.
Okay.
And so I spoke at length with Andrew just about I think actually, I'm gonna not talk about this because I think you're gonna talk about the potential grant that
Right.
the Regional Planning Commission might tackle, which is due on the 31st. But, yeah, so.
We did the 211 the very morning after,
Right.
the very first thing we did 211.
Online?
Yeah, and it went through,
It went
fine,
through.
said,
Okay.
thank you.
So I think it was going through, but there was a lag, is my understanding from talking with Andrew. Like, people that called in, it got submitted right away, but people that were submitting it online, there was a lag. I think it is recorded and it is in their system, but
Yeah.
the communication didn't work as perfectly as supposed.
Yeah, so I haven't talked to you yet. I'm Carly Thompson, and I live right next to the house.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
garage, yes.
The whole neighborhood's here.
And I'm just curious how we know who pays for what when? Like, because I don't have major damage to my property that's past the wall, but there is some damage to the wall, and there's also like weird rusted wagons that emerge on what now is a beach, that I have, which it's all
You don't
sand.
want?
Like, my rocks are not there, but different rocks are there, and the steps down to the water are no longer there. So clearly there's damage, but do I try to put new steps in with different rocks? Does somebody come and do that?
So
What
what
about
I've
the
been,
trees falling over? Like, I just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's a lot of trees, there's rusty old toys.
what's your address?
466 East Main Street.
Okay, so you're just downstream. So,
Between us.
I'm between.
okay, okay. So I probably walked, oh no, because we walked around. We walked around.
She's between my house and Lee's.
Right.
Across from.
Yeah, because when I went to your house, I walked the road, I think, because your slope is more vegetated right there, which I think probably protected you. I'll come check it out with you. But I would still submit on Vermont 211. I think that's the major takeaway here. Submit on there that at least tracks it, and I think it's a short window, it's early August that those submittals have to be in by. And then I can come down and look at it, just so we have a document.
And what about also, like, and I know we're jumping ahead of what is known in actuality, but like in terms of like our garage, for example, is totally unsupported except for those boulders in the back, and like it's zoning wise, it's going to be needing to be torn down probably at some point and relocated. Like, if insurance doesn't cover that, is there a possibility of like getting funding for that, or do we just have to figure that out?
There's potential to get funding for it.
Okay.
I think even through the funding source that we're looking at further down the agenda, I
Yeah.
think there's a clause in there for that sort of structural issue. But have you reached out to zoning yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, because you could also potentially relocate it if it works within your footprint.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I wonder about my ridge too, because I did talk to you recommended a hydrogeologist who came and looked at it and was, it sounds like it's gonna be a really big job. So, but it's my house and the house just to the east, and then that ridge goes all down the road, and so like if I put a retaining wall in, I mean, is that completely gonna be my responsibility? Or is that something that there could be funding for? I know this doesn't have anything to do with the river, but it's in that location.
Yeah, it's all sort of connected though. There's potentially funding for that. I think, when did he say he would get you? Is he gonna look at it more?
He's researching all the landforms behind.
Okay.
Sorry. He's researching all the landforms behind my ridge. So, yeah, he's gonna get back with me.
Okay, just circle back with me, and then I can look into different funding options and get more information once we're kind of out of the.
Okay. Yeah, because he was like, "This is gonna be a lot."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay," because I've got big repairs to my basement to do after all of this too, and it's really overwhelming.
Yeah, understood.
question. Having submitted to 211 early on, now we've discovered more expenses needed for our basement.
For the
Can I
basement.
adjust it? Can I go back?
So I would try calling them, because I think they're,
It's not busy all the time.
I haven't tried calling in, has anybody else?
We tried for days and couldn't get
And it was
in touch.
busy.
You can update. I submitted two, because my first flip was on July 11th, and then everything.
Oh, right, because you flooded in the original, the
Yes.
initial storm.
Yeah, and then, yes, it's just been very, very wet.
But you were able to update it online?
I updated it on.
Okay. Oh, okay. Good. That's probably the easiest. Yeah, and I can try to get more information from how it's all going to play out. I mean, I think the biggest thing is the state making the declarations for us to consider. So once we get over that hurdle, I'll have
Emily, thanks so much for the quick work as things were falling apart, and for providing all this information to residents in need. Much appreciated, for sure. Holy cow.
Yeah, but shoot me an email, so I think I have everybody else.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
Debbie, see you.
Really appreciate everyone coming, and so sorry for
Thanks for
the everything.
listening.
Of course, absolutely. Moving on from the devastation of climate change to a tiny bit of mitigation to carbon-based economy and the effects thereof. Looking at a proposal for solar on the town office building.
Yes, so back in May, I forget when I came to you, we had looked into taking a certain approach to solar, and writing the RFQ made me realize that we needed to pull back a little bit. So I reached out to Ellen Consulting. We reached out to a few companies, but Ellen Consulting responded. And they have provided us with a proposal to do preliminary design and also write the RFQ to get solar installed on this building. And so.
And it's my recollection that basically the Inflation Reduction Act includes a ton of subsidies, particularly for municipal purchased solar.
Yeah, so the Inflation Reduction Act essentially provides a 30% benefit, and then if we purchased a solar, if the panels were US made, it would be an additional 10% on top of that.
Right.
So a significant reduction in the overall cost. And the other benefits is that we would actually own the panels, and so then we would be directly receiving the credits.
Rather than the lease arrangement
Exactly.
that we were looking at with zero money down.
Right.
If you can get 40% off the top
Right.
by owning it yourself, that's
Right.
probably the way to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems like the smarter direction. And so they've provided a cost of $3,500 to sort of do some preliminary engineering just to make sure the numbers that we were working with work, and then also submit the RFQ and help us through the bid analysis. We can, this proposal does not include them on retainer moving forward beyond that, but
It gets us through
it gets us through
the end of
Exactly.
receiving bids.
Exactly.
Cool.
And then last week, I think it was last week, I went to the Energy Committee and asked them if they would help support this project by providing the funding for this proposal, and they agreed to do that.
Fantastic. Okay. Any other questions? Very good. I would entertain a motion.
Okay. I move to approve the proposed agreement between the town of Middlebury and LN Consulting, Inc. relating to the design proposal for the Middlebury Municipal Building Solar Development Project for $3,500.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate.
Aye.
Very good. It's unanimous. Before you go, is there any thought to the ice rink and the potential for solar there?
I felt like it was all a little too rushed to
Sure.
formulate it all at once, and with the roofing repairs and which direction we were taking with the roofing repairs and what it could structurally hold, we didn't include it in this,
Yeah.
but we can easily, I think we should use this as a lesson, and then when it works and we have a good result, then we can go back. I know there was talk about the rec center, there was talk about memorials, so
Yeah.
use this as a approach that we can work off of for further.
Perfect. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have an update on South Street?
We don't have an update on South Street. Our engineer did email the project manager on Monday, I think, and I have not seen a response yet. I know, so Casella is our prime contractor. They've been pulled off of every other construction site that I'm aware of to go to emergency.
Gotcha.
So, and my concern with South Street, if we do bump the schedule any further back, it puts us at the late window for paving.
Yeah.
And so, once we hear back from Casella, we'll have a better idea of if it's feasible, but it could potentially get bumped next year.
I had someone who lives on South Street come up to me recently talking about how from the road to the sidewalk, their driveway is elevated.
Is it that 17?
Yeah.
Street?
Yeah. So I'm wondering, is that something that's included
Yes.
in the project?
Well, so we are replacing the sidewalk in front of that property, and we're replacing the water line immediately below their driveway. So that little bit of apron will get replaced at the same time.
Yeah.
We are doing a lot of the aprons at the same time, but I did go out there and look at theirs specifically. And yes.
And that little thing
one
is
will
called
be
an
addressed.
apron?
Yeah, the dry apron.
Cute. Okay. Well, thank you. I love learning infrastructure terms.
Yeah. Amazing. Thanks so much, Emily.
So, you're going to stay for the,
Yes, I
Okay.
won't go anywhere.
right, thank you.
Yeah, following our order, we've got David up next.
So can I sit here, or should I scoot over there?
It's
or
fine
does that
over
work?
there.
Okay.
We'll leave Emily.
No, that's fine. So this is just a follow-up from initial sort of discussion we had in early June, a couple meetings ago. So I won't go through it all again, but just a 60-second summary. Town of Middlebury, like most jurisdictions throughout the United States, have certain obligations under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The town was contacted by V-Trans earlier in the spring to kind of gently say, how's it going in that department? And we had a very, Emily and I both attended a workshop with a bunch of other municipalities throughout the state. There's a lot of great resources out there that lay out what's required, sort of in layman's language. And I won't, there's 5 basic steps, and I won't go through each one because I did it last time. It's in the packet, so I don't want to use up too much of the time here. Essentially, the first 3 are procedural. The next 2 are a town-wide assessment of all of our ADA barriers, which will eventually have a cost to it, and is a report that's required under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It has to do with your town's facilities, parks, roads, sidewalks, programs, activities. And it's designed to really inform local jurisdictions that here are the barriers you have to now go out and tackle. If you don't do the analysis, you'll never know what to tackle. And I think it's obviously it's a very good concept. So tonight we're presenting the procedures, both the grievance policy and the associated form and the public notice, all of which are required elements of the ADA for our town. If they're approved, how this will work practically is we will post the public notice permanently, physically around town at our facilities and the bulletin boards and on the town's website. We will we'll create a subpage on the website working with Crystal, the current website, then obviously the one that's underway right now to be the new one. So the information will be posted there permanently. In the event the town receives a grievance, which is sort of basically hey, I think that there could be a barrier relates to your town's activities. I will be serving as the town's ADA coordinator, which is similar to a lot of other municipalities in Vermont. We'll take the information in following the steps in the procedure. The vast majority of them relate to public works infrastructure, frankly. They're curbs and there could be crosswalks and things like that. Somebody may think there should be certain types of lighting at crosswalks or whatnot. We'll have that conversation, A, to figure out if it's really needed, and B, what's the reasonable pathway that we can do this. My understanding is the ADA is not requiring us to fix it instantly, but you have to make a good faith effort to try to tackle it, and we'll respond to the constituent. I can tell you, talking to the folks who've done this in Rutland and Bennington and Montpelier, they get one a year, maybe, or two. They're not getting inundated by these complaints. Frankly, a lot of them tend to be solved just more informally. Somebody will call Public Works and they put it on a list for the next contract for crosswalk paintings, and it gets resolved. So that's what's being presented tonight. Any questions about, that was the why, but any questions about the what or the why?
So the intent is not to create a web fillable grievance form, but the form will be available from the website?
Yeah, and we have to make the opportunity there have to be multiple avenues for people to be able to fill it out. I mean, it goes with the spirit of the law.
Sure.
It's not just, so in theory, somebody could call the office and say, I'd like to present a grievance, can you take it over the phone? We would do it that way if somebody wanted to come in and do it. So in spirit with the law, there's supposed to be multiple avenues to try to.
And you can do online also.
I think what we'll be doing is posting the form online to be filled out and sent in, but we'll check with our website to see whether a fillable form is plausible. If not, it certainly will be tackleable in the new website.
We did a lot of fillable forms with that same platform, and they were really easy.
Okay. So it'll be multiple ways to try to, if somebody has that.
Sure.
Yeah.
If somebody has that desire to, and there's avenues for people to submit it on behalf of somebody else if they'd rather not submit it themselves.
They
so.
can scan it and email it too.
Yeah, and the idea is we really have to make it as easy as possible to get that grievance in to respond to it. And the policies are mirrored at both after the boilerplate language presented by the New England ADA Center, as well as some of the other policies that other towns in Vermont have already adopted and have been using for a few years. So we try not to reinvent the wheel, but rather use the language that's been recommended to us.
And so your process has the appeal go to the infrastructure committee. Is that common practice?
So it's varied a little by town. Montpelier and Rutland, if I'm remembering correctly, have essentially ADA standing committees, if you will. They may not be the exact name, but they were created as part of their compliance efforts with the ADA. But since the issues most logically tend to relate to infrastructure, at least practically, in theory, they could be a complaint that, you're holding a youth program on the second floor of a building that has no elevator, so can you bring it down to the first floor? In theory, that's a possibility that we would have to talk to Parks about, but practically most of it does, it's more capital infrastructure related.
Yeah.
So we logically felt that if somebody didn't like the initial response from the town, from me, Frank, from the manager's office, we could present it to a larger, they could appeal it, and they could have a larger conversation about whether there's a need to get a
That
different
makes sense,
Rosetta.
and I don't think we need,
We don't really have another body,
Particular-
yeah, we don't have another body that really could handle that and is substantively related to it, so.
any other comments or questions?
Okay. There you go.
It's a really good crowd.
Motion?
Motion.
I'll move to approve the proposed ADA grievance procedure, related grievance complaint form, and ADA public notice for the town of Middlebury.
Second.
Excellent. It's moved and seconded. All those in favor? Heather's on the ball. We're
Aye.
there. Aye?
Aye.
Yeah. All in. Very good.
All right. Wants
David.
more work for the infrastructure committee. That was an enthusiasm there.
I saw that.
Nice
Thanks,
going.
everybody.
Thank you. Kathleen, the next item is yours.
I'm gonna hand
Emily.
it over to Emily.
Perfect,
She
there you
is
go.
our flood
There's a good boss.
plan.
The application for-
application for watershed protection program, emergency watershed protection program, to the residents that were here this evening that suffered, some of the stream bank scour concerns, the ones with the garage that's now perched.
Yeah.
Have asked the town to partner on this. Kathleen, you might be able to describe it better, but it's essentially, the town it serves the resident, but the town, they have to have municipal support, to
I've seen this
allow-
before.
Recently.
Yeah. Indeed. And they found this and brought it to the town?
I think this was from their conversations with regional planning.
Okay.
Talking with Andrew LaRoe today, he had another avenue also that residents could potentially look into. The deadline for this one is the 31st, I think, and the other window is really tight also, so it didn't seem like we were gonna be able to pull it off,
Yeah.
basically.
Super tight.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this one, they got it in right away, right after the initial. And so this, I think, the wording that I've seen, I think this could potentially help them relocate their garage or tear down their garage, which would then also allow us to go back in and provide better stabilization on that slope as part of the project, so.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Motion?
More comments, questions? No, we're all in.
Yep.
Let's have a motion.
I move to submit with the town as the sponsor, the proposed application to the Emergency Watershed Protection Program for the property at 468 East Main Street in Middlebury.
Second. Lindsay.
Lindsay got it. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate.
Aye.
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 Very good. We're just a unanimous group. Thanks so much,
Easy stuff.
Kathleen and Emily. Joe, the time has come.
Busy Joe.
We were 10 minutes ahead of schedule, and then
I know.
the flood happened.
You're not spending a lot of time in this room this week, daily, in fact. Hi, everybody. Hello to Heather and Fred and Laura zooming in. I'm Joe McVeigh here in my capacity as chair of the ILSI 100 project team, just with an update on what's happening with library plans. And the update is, we are at the single most exciting part of this project, so far. And I think many of you have had a chance to take a look at these plans. We've had 3 different firms submit some really interesting and different approaches to the problems that we set for them. And so the library trustees, the library staff, our professional advisory group of architects, the project team have all been looking at these quite closely. This week, yesterday, today, and again tomorrow, we've been spending 2 hours with each of these architect and design teams, in part so that we can get a better feel for their designs and exactly how they work, and perhaps even more so we get a sense of what we're referring to as their team collaborative communication skills, or kind of what's their chemistry with each other, what's their chemistry with us, do they listen well, are they responsive? I have to say that so far, the two firms that we've spoken to have all had, I don't think I should call it a complaint, but have all pointed out that our design competition has put them in a position which is very different from the ways that they normally like to work, because a good architect is going to work with their client and ask them a lot of questions, and we haven't really permitted them to do that. We have rather set them a very detailed scope of what it is that we're looking for, and they've responded to it, but they've had to respond to it kind of in a vacuum. So I think they've welcomed the chance to come in front of us and to talk with us, and our first two meetings have been very, very positive. We're looking forward to another one tomorrow. Meanwhile, we're really hoping to get a lot of positive feedback from the public, and on Thursday by about noon, we'll have these designs up on display in the library lobby. There will be a little explanation of what's going on and some comment cards, and we'll invite the public to take a look at these design concepts and give us some feedback. We're a little concerned about this, and the reason that we're concerned is because it's a little difficult to wrap your mind around the concept of a concept, which is to say, these. In the olden days, if you were going to design a building, you'd sketch it out on a piece of paper and you'd show it to somebody. And these days, they've got real snazzy computer stuff. And so they sketch it out on the computer, and pretty soon it looks like you've got a finished building. And they've got all kinds of things. They can zoom you through it in 3D, and it looks very impressive. And so then you have to back away from that and say to people, this building is not built. This is just an idea. And people tend to get wedded a bit to the visual impact. It's very, very strong. So we're trying to emphasize to people, if you don't like the facade of the building, we can change that. It can be something else. If you don't like where the children's room is, we can change that, so that we're really still in a conceptual stage. What we're really hoping for is a good turnout at our public meeting on Wednesday, August 9th at 6:30 at the Town Hall Theater, when all three of these architecture firms will present their designs to the public. We're also interested to see how they go about doing that. And again, we'll be getting some feedback from them. We also hope that most of you on the Select Board have had a chance to look at these. Lindsay, I think Ruth Hardy's in touch. It just texted you, okay, and I think Heather, Ken Perrine might be in touch with you, and when Brian is back, I think Jim Gish will try to spend some time with him to look at those plans. Last Thursday, Dana and I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. John Flowers, the reporter of the Addison Independent next door, and to share with him in general terms, kind of what's been happening, and I think there'll be an article in Thursday's newspaper. Kind of outlining what's going on, and hopefully we'll be able to give them some more details later on. It is a design competition, so what we're trying to do is to get the information out to the public, but in an even-handed kind of way, so that we're able to point out the distinctions between the design, but not favor any particular one. So it's been great being where we are now. We feel like we've got a lot of momentum. It's an exciting time. And Dan and Farhad are in on the ground floor, and I don't know if you guys have any comments to add, or if there are any other comments or questions.
This is a really fun stage. These architectural firms are really good, and the displays that they've got look like they could build a building tomorrow. The displays are outstanding.
They have small 3D models that you can
Neat.
look at.
Oh, cool.
It's very revealing, I think, and how different they are from each other.
Yeah, all three
They come from a
concepts are
very
completely
different perspective. Now, one of them says this should look like this, the other one has a totally different idea about what it should look like. But our group has so many questions to them, very good questions, and they have answered.
We've been really benefited from having this professional advisory group of architects, Glenn Andress, Tom Keefe, and David Hamilton, who see things that we don't and ask perceptive questions that we don't think about. As you know, we're offering each of these firms a stipend of $5,000, and according to our design advisory team, we're getting way, way, way more than our money's worth from these guys, like $25,000.
I think we should give the credit to the LC 100 team also. The GBA made a comment yesterday, and the people from GBA, they said, this is a totally different group of people we are working with than the last time they did. It looks more diverse, more educated. I think we put in a lot more work than the previous one, I think.
Well, and again, I think we have to give a lot of credit to Judith Harris,
Yes.
who has really facilitated this process flawlessly and very fairly, and has done a tremendous, tremendous job. And we also heard kudos from the the professional advisory group on the quality of the submissions we got. One of them said, I've seen a lot of design competitions, and, the firm that won the competition was nowhere near as good as any of the firms that we have, so we're feeling good about it.
A couple other interesting things. The bathtub is in each of the designs, the bathtub. of
The bathtub from the
You
children.
can find it, they specifically have in there because they listen, and as what our previous discussion, they all include solar, so instead of waiting till later, it's there. Whether we can fund that solar is another thing.
There's a lot of discussion about sustainability and energy efficiency. It did occur to me that the trustees originally put together a vision for the future of the library, which was to be a welcoming, accessible, safe, and flexible community hub, sustainable into the future. And it occurred to me that the reason that was our vision was because we do not feel that the present building is welcoming, accessible, safe, et cetera. So we realized that we've been very close to this project for the past year and a half, 2 years plus, and the fact that we're so close to us sometimes makes us forget that the entire community may not be quite as aware as we are of these issues. So we hope to. We thank the Addison Independent and other
Who's sneaking out?
other
Not very well, but
other sources for helping us get the word out of the need. So.
Great.
Yes, I'm urging you to talk it up, absolutely.
Yeah, I spent some quality time looking at the plats, the drawings with Joe, and the different approaches are just awesome.
Yep.
Really neat.
It's really exactly what we wanted from a design competition, was to get ideas, and as Dan will repeat, we're really not hiring a design, we're really looking for a team to work collaboratively with us, and there will be many, many more opportunities for community input once we move ahead. And I would remind the board that we do have funds committed in this year's capital campaign to move ahead with schematic design. So, schematic design. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you. See
So
you tomorrow.
Joe mentioned that Town Hall Theater, August 9th.
August 9th, Town Hall Theater, 6:30 PM at that meeting. We'll give a quick overview of our process. Each of our three design architecture firms will present their design to the public. We'll have an opportunity for questions and feedback at that time. So it's a great opportunity for the public to participate.
And we have a hand by Fred Dunnington.
Oh, all right.
All right, Fred.
Come on, Fred.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
I commend your committee on being able to have this design competition. It's fantastic. I got a brief look at these in David Softman's office the other day, and I was thinking that what is the measure of one that will succeed? And I came to learn in my years of working on development in Middlebury that development is about attracting investment. which project is going to attract the investment? Private, by being inspired by a great design with few perceived difficulties, or public, the same? And I think the ones that reduce public parking in back might be perceived as concerning. That was my first reaction. The others that, of the designs that show the most efficient circulation and complement the downtown and existing buildings. Those are my reactions. And maybe you should think about what criteria you would use to judge. I think attracting public investment, public and private investment, is a pretty significant one. Thank you.
And I was just going to comment, that is at the top, that's up near the top of our list. You actually had us vote which one might be the most appealing for money.
Well, but that's a somewhat subjective question, isn't
Yes.
it? Which
Yes,
one
yes.
of these is going to attract that? But thank you very much, Fred, and we hope to hear more from your ideas. I mentioned to Kathleen the other day that the fascinating thing for me has been hearing the pros and cons of these different designs from different people, and the fact that one person's pros are another person's cons. You know, one person will say, well, I love the way that this site looks down the hill to the future EDI possibility. And someone else will say, well, I really think they colored outside the lines there, that's not in their brief at all, they shouldn't have done that. Or, I love this light-filled atrium, or, no, I think that's going to cause a lot of noise. And Kathleen's response when I complained a little bit about the fact that people had different opinions was, welcome to my world, Joe.
Ah, yes. Oh, humans.
Herding cats.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Joe.
Joe. See you tomorrow.
Lovely.
Yes, soon.
Oh, all right.
At 9.
Check warrants, are you?
I've got them, yep.
Fantastic.
I move to approve total expenditures in the amount of $661,233.71, consisting of $531,871.99 for accounts payable and $129,361.72 for payroll for the period of July 12th, 2023 through July 25th, 2023.
Excellent.
Second.
All of the invoices seem to be in order.
Yeah, checked them, met with Deb, learned about her dogs.
Fantastic. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Thanks, Heather. Moving on to board member concerns and following Brian's practice of starting with the people the farthest away. Heather.
Thanks, Andy. Sorry, I wasn't ready with
I know, I caught you off guard.
with the unmuting button. I just had one comment. With the rain in my neck of the woods, the mosquitoes are horrendous.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, yeah. You're not alone.
Okay. And I didn't know, I know there, in the past, there has been mosquito spraying. I don't know if the town has ever participated, but I'm just wondering, like along South Street Extension, I know we can't get down Creek Road, but 3 Mile Bridge Road. Anyway, I was just curious in all of Kathleen's spare time, if there's any money or any opportunity to join in with the Leicester or Salisbury spraying in those areas, just to try to cut down on some of the mosquitoes. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Heather.
I had the pleasure on being on Middlebury College's campus today, and I got to experience the language school, and that was just really amazing to be in the presence of so many people speaking in a language that they're learning and at different stages of learning the language as well.
I see them.
No.
You didn't get to go to lunch? Go to lunch there. It's good stuff.
I see them every day, and it's so fascinating to see all this
Yeah.
Russian speaking, Japanese speaking, and amazing.
Awesome. Dan.
I'm going to be a little more philosophical than I normally am, but I'm sorry I missed the DPW luncheon today. I goofied my way right through forgetting about it. But obviously, it was demonstrated the amount of work they did, and thank you for that. But I also think I've had a couple of demonstrations, particularly with Emily tonight and David, on what great hires you've made recently. You know, these two are fabulous. And also, I've been.
He's still here, it's gonna slow his head.
Oh, he is still here. And also with Dana. Dana Hart is coming in on maternity leave to be in these meetings.
Yeah.
So
Phenomenal.
we've got passionate people that are working for our town. This is great.
Thanks, Sue.
Yes.
Truer words. Lindsay?
I was just gonna say, the paving on my street, and I'm thinking Lino, and whichever ones were over there are done.
It didn't get washed out, right?
No, it didn't get washed away. I mean it when I say I think the flood resiliency project is the only reason there's an East Middlebury
Right.
still. Like, it was crazy. It was crazy. But yeah, we have a newly paved road, and I just wanted to say it was quick, it was painless, they were professional, I was expecting people to blow up my phone because, you know I live there. Nobody asked because they had talked to everyone, so just, I appreciate that. And now we can skateboard.
Yay. Oh, that's so much fun. And rollerblading on
And
fresh
rollerblading,
pavement.
oh, yeah.
So good. Farhad?
I'm all good, thank you.
You're all set? Yeah, I'm also sorry that I missed the luncheon today. I did reach out to Emily ahead of time.
Goofied my way through that one.
Yeah, I was tied up in Montpelier.
Do you want to talk about the possibility of meeting on August 9th
Oh,
instead of August 8th?
what a great idea.
So that we can go to the design
Okay.
competition
Sure. At the town
presentations
hall.
right after that.
I think that makes a great,
Maybe meet at 5:30?
yeah, I like
Is that
to
a-
eat
is
at
that a
some
select board
point.
Okay,
No, it's a
so
Wednesday.
want me to bring
I didn't
some
think so,
sandwiches?
so what do we?
Sandwiches might be lovely.
So we're gonna
Select
just
board
do 5:30, 6:30?
Tuesday.
Like a quick
You're
one?
suggesting no select board meeting that Tuesday?
Right.
And meeting Wednesday?
Yeah.
An hour before, essential business only.
I'll Zoom. I have a medical procedure.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
Are you
So-
not making the
Are
6:30?
you not going to come there?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, yeah, he has something.
I have a preparation to go through the night
Okay,
before
so
that makes
would
me
you-
stay at home.
Yes, I understand.
So I'll Zoom.
meet on
Yeah,
the-
oh, it's
No,
delicious
he's
though.
He's
I've been through
gonna,
it many
he's
times.
gonna miss that presentation anyways.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's being broadcast and it's being recorded, so I'm
You
good
will
with
not
that.
ask if you turn off your camera? No questions, no judgment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Works better.
Yeah.
We can do
I don't want
both
anybody
of
to know
them.
how
And-
tough I'm not.
Are we all in agreement that the Wednesday's okay, except for Dan?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Heather?
Heather?
Brian,
You okay? Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian will
Dan
come along for the
Schmamm,
ride.
so-
I'm
Brian's
in.
not here.
That's right.
Is Brian not here?
Not tonight.
No.
We do not have an executive session?
No executive.
Amazing.
I motion to
Still
adjourn.
light out?
Yes, there it is.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, boy, he shows dying to.
That counts as an aye, Heather.
Well, that wasn't
Lovely to see
too
you.
bad.
No, that wasn't too bad.
No, that was